What is the scariest Pokemon of every type? It's Halloween season, and basically since the inception of the franchise, Pokemon fans basically make it an annual tradition to pour through creepy, disturbing, or otherwise violent Pokedex entries to showcase how frightening our favorite franchise can be. This is not that video. If you've been watching this channel for a while, you know one of my favorite aspects of the franchise is Pokemon design, and how richly layered each Pokemon is, in terms of lore, personality, influence, and physical appearance. So we'll be considering all of those things as we make our way through a list of the Pokemon that instill me with the most fear on all levels. Both what you can see physically and what is implied through lore, personality, or inspiration. I find the concept of fear very interesting because of how deeply ingrained in our psyche this instinct is. Or, I don't know, something like that. I'm not a psychologist. What you might find frightening is far different from what might disturb me, so keep that in mind. Perhaps some of these Pokemon are inconspicuous, but might scare me because of a very specific phobia that I have, or have disturbing implications when you look at its physical appearance and consider its existence in universe. So don't expect Pokemon that are just, quote, scary in name only like Gengar just because it's a ghost. It's actually quite cute and playful in most forms of media. And same goes for Pokemon like Drifloon that, yes, do have disturbing Pokedex entries, but don't instill any fear in me when I look at it or consider its existence just because of some exaggerated one sentence of lore. And to further differentiate this from other lists like this, I added the challenge of going through every single type in order and picking just one Pokemon for each, as a representative of the scariest Pokemon of that type. Otherwise, this would be a list of mostly ghost or dark types, probably. So let's see what we can find when considering the otherwise inconspicuous normal, bug, or electric types. Maybe this will unearth some unconventional fears in all of us, and will help me sort out some deep-rooted phobias that I might have. Without further ado, let's get it started with the bug type. One that I definitely think is full of Pokemon that might make me squirm, because I don't really like bugs in real life, like many people. But bug types, by and large, are pretty cute and cartoonish. But when I look at Pinsir, yeah, this thing has always upset me. It's definitely not the biggest bug type, but given that it's so animalistic and not humanoid, something about its sheer size and force really disturbs me and looks jarring. Imagine this thing running at you in the wild. Plus, you'll see later in this video, one of my biggest fears is the idea of a force of nature. A thing or animal that will just harm you without hesitation because it doesn't know any other way. It's devoid of humanity or morals. An Orbeetle might melt my brain, but it's definitely intelligent enough that I can at least try to reason with it beforehand. But Pinsir looks so just devoid of that instinct, even with those eyes. It almost looks like an alligator or, well, a giant bug. Shoo, get out of here. There's no shortage of good dark type choices, but like I said, just because something is physically imposing or violent doesn't mean it's scary. But Darkrai is horrifying to me because it is those things and also has the power of dreams, which basically means there's no escaping this thing. I find psychological horror very compelling. The idea that you can torment someone just by depriving them of basic necessities like sleep, or at least infiltrate their dreams and torture them in a state where they have no control. Even worse if you're forcing them to fall asleep. It's enough to drive basically anyone to the point of breakdown, losing the safety that sleep provides. That side quest in the Sinnoh games where that kid is in a deep sleep with no way to wake them up other than stopping this fever dream-like eldritch entity, that really disturbs me as a kid. And speaking of eldritch horror, my pick for Dragon is Guzzlord. This is a great example of the implications and psychological elements of the Pokemon that trump the scariness of its physical design. I actually think Guzzlord has some cute elements, like a little face on the top of its body and a stubby, rotund figure. But damn, this Pokemon simultaneously nails what it's going for, which is to basically be the embodiment of the unknowable cosmic forces. A black hole, something that could literally destroy life as we know it through something as basic as consumption. Like I mentioned earlier, a huge element of horror that I both love and fear is the concept of the force of nature. Think of any number of fictional aliens that you simply cannot reason with because they're just keeping themselves alive and just happen to be strong enough that their consumption, their survival, and their instincts come at the expense of almost anything around it. It's like trying to outrun a storm. That lack of control really frightens me. Maybe because it reminds me that we as humans also exert this destructive force on the world around us, as we're just trying to keep ourselves alive. And it's kind of upsetting to come to terms with the fact that the universe itself is just inherently destructive and violent. Am I getting too deep with this? Finally, a type that doesn't scream fear when you see it. How could electric be, with its bright colors and many familiar mammalian or perhaps man-made Pokemon? Well, it's the blend of both that frightens me when I look at Xurkitree. I'll admit that at certain points in this video, I might play things up a bit, but Xurkitree is really, truly one of a few handful of Pokemon that disturbs me, and I try to avoid looking at it most of the time because it makes me uncomfortable. I can't really explain why. Maybe it's the fact that it resembles a human and has that implication of intelligence while controlling a hugely destructive force like electrical wires. Maybe it's the way it moves, like it was made to belong in some low-budget horror film. It actually looks like an SCP or a backrooms entity to me. But strangely, I can't find a concrete answer for this one. For Fairy, another type that you think wouldn't be that frightening, I found myself picking Shiinotic as the answer. As you'll see at least once more in this video, I really do have a fear of fungi in real life. Why? I'm not really sure, but something about the way it grows super fast in almost any condition feels kind of predatory and parasitic, almost like they're an alien, hostile version of plants. I'm not kidding. I look at a tree and I'm fine, but sometimes mushrooms make me queasy. Maybe it's evolutionarily hardwired in us. After all, the sight or the smell of fungus and mold is a good indicator that something has died or is decayed nearby, so it makes sense as a primal fear, so you can stay away from it. And while Shiinotic is admittedly a bit silly, it has a blank expression and slender fingers that I find really unnerving as well. Fighting is the type that I surprisingly had the most trouble with. Perhaps their humanoid elements and physicality was familiar to me, and thus didn't strike me as uncanny or unnerving. I guess the one that comes as the closest to scaring me is Annihilape, simply because the idea of an apparition motivated by rage is different from most ghost-type pranksters in the franchise, and I wouldn't want to encounter one of these. Something about the broken shackles around its wrist and matted wild hair, not to mention its scowling expression, reads as a Pokemon that never got its happy ending. Instead, tormented and bound to a negative emotion for eternity. It's a cool design, but certainly one that I find uncomfortable and disturbing. For Fire, it's without a doubt Blacephalon, another Ultra Beast. Not only is it a clown, which I'm not mentioning because it's another horror monster trope, unlike mummies, zombies, or vampires, clowns legitimately disturb me. Not to mention the concept of an exploding head is unnerving, at best, and surprisingly gruesome for Pokemon. Why does it do that? Is it a form of attack, or just a prank meant to unnerve its foes? When I think about it, standing next to this Pokemon would actually stress me out, given that I really don't like clowns or loud explosive noises like fireworks. For flying, I think it's gotta be Sigilyph, a Pokemon that also just disturbs me ever so slightly. This Pokemon almost feels regal and intelligent, but is also very inaccessible and almost alien-like. The intricate patterns and many wide eyes, which in and of itself is a visual trope that really triggers me, works together to make me feel like this Pokemon is always watching me in a really unsettling way, and has some kind of hidden agendas that I couldn't comprehend even if I tried. It feels like some sort of cosmic ancient horror that is trying to disguise itself with vaguely familiar features, kind of like a biblically accurate angel. And now we reach Ghost. As I said, I'm not going to pick the ghostliest looking ghost just because that's on theme with Halloween. I actually find most of these designs and concepts silly, cute, and imaginative. This is my favorite Pokemon type for a reason. But Banette actually upsets me. The fact that it's like Annihilape, it's motivated and consumed by rage and vengeance, is just intimidating. Like it's an evil dude that I wouldn't want to befriend. Plus, like Xurkitree, I really do think I have a fear of sentient humanoid things made out of artificial materials. The fact that it has a zipper mouth and these bloodshot button eyes is so disturbing to me. The Mega is even worse. Looking at these unzipped arms with these red claws just spilling out actually makes me kind of queasy, I'm not even kidding. Maybe it reminds me of the bug-filled Oogie Boogie from A Nightmare Before Christmas? I'm not sure. For Grass, it's unsurprisingly a classic of Pokemon creepypastas. Parasect. I'm probably the last person to harp on this Pokemon's concept. I won't even show it on screen because you all know what a Cordyceps is, either after watching The Last of Us or from this Pokemon, and it grosses me out either way. The idea of something so realistic, just a mushroom taking over a living organism, slowly enveloping its consciousness, is horrifying to me. That lack of control. Plus, did I mention that I don't like mushrooms? For Ground, this is a weird one, Hippowdon. Yes, don't make fun of me, I think this Pokemon is way too intense for being a fairly mid-tier Pokedex edition. Hippos in real life scare me because of how insanely powerful and violent they are, and the fact that this is an even more predatory and semi-realistic hippo does it for me even more. The whole sand thing adds to it as well. I can just imagine it burrowing and walking under sand, rising up to swallow me whole, like a sandworm would, almost. And with sand spilling out of some sort of hollow cavity on its body, I just find the holes on its body gross. Maybe because of that trypophobia trigger that everyone seems to have. For ice, it's going to be Glalie for the same reasons as some of the others. I just feel like this Pokemon would stress me out. Every part of its design just feels hostile, malicious, and grotesque. It's just a giant face with an unpleasant expression that will chase you around. I also fear the holes and divots on its face for the same reason as Hippowdon. Why are they there? The Mega is bad as well. It's even more unpleasant as its jaw dislocates and lies agape. Like Blacephalon, the whole facial mutilation thing is a little much for me. And now, Normal type. How could that invoke fear in anyone? Well, if you're Exploud. Rinse and repeat the concerns about trypophobia from Hippowdon, the grotesqueness from Glalie, and the fear of loud noises from Blacephalon. It upsets me even more since this Pokemon is such a vague concept, so I can't even appreciate it or come to understand it better through that. It feels like the true definition of a pocket monster. Poison has a lot of room for fear, with a roster full of Pokemon that can inflict some serious and realistic toxic damage, both inadvertently and maliciously, but the one that frightens me the most is Galarian Slowking. There's something about those parasitic relationships that really does it for me, and this Pokemon's appearance is more disturbing than most other poison types. It looks like it's being corrupted and harmed by the Shelder biting on its head with arms, and a torso that's turning purple like it's in septic shock. Which, by the way, the eyes on this thing scare me too for some reason. God, the design is just so uncomfortable here. I also feel like the whole evil wizard thing adds another level of intensity to the concept. For most poison types, I feel like I could outrun their poisons by just not getting stung by a stinger. But this Pokemon seems intelligent and powerful enough to harm me in much more unavoidable ways. I feel like Psychic should be more frightening, what with plenty of humanoid designs that can read as threatening and in the uncanny valley. But the only one that really did it for me is Claydol, which is another man-made Pokemon with humanoid elements that disturbs me. The idea that one of these hyper-intelligent beings can just exist out of clay is too much for me. It also has the Sigil of Fear factor. I feel like these eyes are staring into my soul, and it has some sort of unknowable eldritch power or motivation. I mentioned that big, bulging eyes, especially when they're unblinking and just stare at you, are a huge source of fear for me with any form of art or character design, and that's certainly true here. With all the geometric and muted designs, it's hard to remember that Nihilego is indeed a rock type. But it is, and it scares me. Perhaps it's again that parasitic relationship. This alien seems to have a biology literally designed to wrap itself around your head and feed off of you. Lusamine, in my opinion, is the greatest Pokemon villain and a truly disturbing story because of this, which I think cemented Nihilego as a source of fear for me years ago. It has no face, no way to read it, no way to reason with it. It just consumes you by feeding off of you, the only thing that it knows how to do. I always love this juxtaposition of beauty and fear, and this Pokemon strikes that perfectly. Steel has plenty of imposing and even threatening designs, but the only one that really scares me in the true sense of the word is Stakataka. You know the reason, it's the eyes. There are so many bricks in this thing, and the fact that each one of them probably has an eye horrifies me. I think the resemblance to Guardians from Breath of the Wild doesn't help at all. This thing is basically made to come to life and chase you around on its spindly little legs. It's amazing how something seemingly so innocent, just a pile of bricks with some eyes, and no way to physically attack you with claws or teeth, is so frightening and imposing physically. It definitely activates that fear of inanimate objects coming to life, made way more intense by just how big this thing is. Water is the largest and perhaps the most varied of all types, so we'll have plenty of options here. Lo and behold, the scariest one in my mind is probably Golisopod. This is truly an imposing design that, every time I look at it, I'm shocked as an official Pokemon, and what's more, just a regular old water type, and not a legendary or anything. It's so incredibly detailed, and does not ease up with more complex, imposing features, whereas almost any other Pokemon tries to have some balance with silliness or cuteness. This Pokemon is actually pretty realistic too. I remember when Sun and Moon came out and I saw this monster for the first time, and I looked up what it was probably based on, and I realized that giant isopods are real. So yeah, this Pokemon doesn't really trigger any specific fears or horror tropes beyond just a general discomfort with bugs, but yeah, that's a really big discomfort sometimes. And with that, we've gone through each and every type. Do you agree with my picks? What Pokemon scare you the most? Let me know down below. I want to thank all my patrons, especially Guardian Patron and Wynne. Your support in the last few months has been huge, and I invite all of you to join as a new patron down below if you haven't already. I also want to mention that I appreciate the patience while I've reduced uploads certain months this summer and fall, like not doing a fall art challenge this year. I've been working very hard behind the scenes with my Fakemon region project, which is shaping up to be a multi-episode endeavor that you'll see here on the channel very soon. Again, I want to thank everyone who supported me as I wrap up the script and commission the last few characters, assets, and the map. I'll be revealing a lot more in due time, but this will be a comprehensive visual novel series. So I will be in touch on all my platforms, here on YouTube, my community Discord, and social media as I launch auditions, that's right, for a small number of voice roles that I have remaining to fill out. These will all be paid roles, ranging from cameos to full-on gym leaders, and will be open to both seasoned and aspiring voice actors, fellow content creators, and anyone in the community so long as you've got a good quality microphone. This project is a huge undertaking and it really takes a village. So I look forward to seeing your audition and I hope that you can be a part of this awesome project when it finally comes out. But I also have some fun regular videos planned in the coming months. In one of those, I will put out the official casting call for this, so please stay tuned and I hope to hear you audition. Be sure to again join my Patreon if you feel like generously supporting this project, or my Discord, so you don't miss updates and you can see exciting sneak previews. This will not be my last upload in the month of October, but I hope this video put you in a good, spooky mood ahead of Halloween. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time for more content.